in the meeting as well, you can just contact me via the chat option.
Thank you so much, Candy. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to start with the first student, who is Chan. So I'm going to start the timer now for 5 minutes, and Chan, take it away.
All right. So if you go to my urban design framework. All right. So my name is Chan, and my proposal for my proposal on Summoner Main Street, I decided to focus on bus transit usage throughout the site, and pedestrian movements and green connection throughout Summoner. What I propose is bus transportation for people that work in the industrial zone up north of Sumner Main Street. Many people that work up there are commuters that does not live in Sumner. And a solution for these commuters to drive a solution for these commuters to drive to their workplace is they could instead park somewhere in the site so they could take a bus transit up there instead. This could also apply for commuters that take the train because they could just get off the train to get on the bus to get to their work destination. Since the bus station is right near where they get off the train, it is most likely convenient for them to use this usage of public transportation. And as for pedestrian movement in the site, I would like to come up with a plan to draw in local residents near the site to come onto Main Street and use the pedestrian alleyways or the site itself. To increase pedestrian traffic, I would like to improve sidewalk walkability throughout the whole site. I will also be redesigning the alleyway on number 4, the circle number 4, to be more pedestrian friendly and attractive. And lastly, for the green connection within the site, there is Heritage Park and Ryan House Museum on Main Street. And I would like to focus on improving Heritage Park by creating new landmarks for people to be attracted towards, which will bring people to Main Street. And on the park, I would like to improve the safety by providing car safety barriers. And so for the urban design framework, the brown arrows are primary routes. That's where people most likely drive towards. And the main one in the center is it's gonna be a one-way directing towards the railway. So it's a one-way there. And as the blue arrows for the residential area, it's for me to show you that I want people to come towards Main Street. So I'm gonna focus directly to like sidewalk walkabilities and crosswalks. And as for the bus station, it's the pink or magenta color on the corner, left corner, and then and the pink like arrows are where the bus will go to. So as you can see, it goes towards the industrial zone, and I wanted to show that that's where the commuters can go to when they go to their workplace. And as you can see in near the bus station, there is parking, and I want to create a parking area where people can just park there, and then they can go towards the bus station and just drive on up there. And as for the dark green, it's a pedestrian movement. I want them to go towards Heritage Park and just move on throughout that site, like through the alleyways, through everything around. And then for my proposed site section and street section, it's gonna be on it. Yeah. All right. So for this one, I just showed you what I want for Main Street, the section I want. And so my Main Street is gonna be a one-way towards the railroad again. And then there's gonna be a bus lane and just a normal one-way lane for cars. There's gonna be a transit shelter, as I want it right here on the picture. It's gonna be all throughout Main Street. And for my proposed street section B, Heritage Park, I wanted so the big picture is gonna be a landmark, and I wanted people to it's gonna be something people's gonna get attractive towards, and they're gonna want to go to Heritage Park and see what's up over there. And yeah, that's for that. And then the legend is right there to show you what I'm talking about. And then for my proposed site plan and images of design strategies, um, do I keep going, Par? All right, well.
Just take 1 more minute.
All right, all right. Okay, so for this one, I wanted to show my proposed what I wanted to do. So the alleyway, the green marked area is I wanted to redesign it to be more comforting and pedestrian friendly and more safety. So I wanted to go like what it looked like on the picture right there on the top left, and then my my proposed bus station, I wanted to redesign it so then it can be more open and more noticeable, so people will go towards it more. And then as for Main Street itself, I took an example from Pike Place Market, and they showed like a different pavement on the floor, and that's what I wanted to do for Main Street, so it can show that they're entering a different zone. And as for the sidewalks, I had an idea from Japan sidewalks, and they have like a barrier for from street to sidewalk. So then I wanted to implement that into the site. And as for my proposal and images, I read my proposal, and then the images, it just shows what I used in the others pictures.
Great, thanks, Chen. We're going to move on to Cipriano straight away.
Hello, my name is Cipriano, and I'm first going to explain about the overall statement of my proposal. I would like to see my statement of proposal.
It's not loading.
All right, it's okay. So basically, my vision is that I want to see the project site as downtown Sumner's main mode of transportation and social service of the area. There will be a central node where the zones and their uses would emanate from one focal point. There will be a hub that brings services, transportation, and employment in one single location. Plus, the hub will supply a multifunctional open space that provides ever-changing reasons for people to come together and be active within their community. This develops a network with a distinct focal point where routes and trails all connect to, which in turns all the surrounding area. After establishing an organized system, then I can implement commodities for pedestrians to utilize that supports the city's requirements for public events and activities, as well as a place for multifamily residential relatively close to both public transportation and downtown Main Street. I would like to propose an organized and ordered design that provides a clear visual of the streets and paths within Main Street and the other commodities in the area. My thoughts for the central node would be a multimodal hub that connects public transportation and most of the main routes and trails. This location would consist of bus stops, terminals, and access to micromobility use. By doing so, the hub allows access that connects to the northern areas of Sumner, such as the industrial employment districts where most jobs are located. With this hub, it would bring a lot of people and create a high density location, social services, multifamily housing, and other commodities that would be placed accordingly. With emphasis on the trails and path networks on Sumner, I would also propose to utilize existing green infrastructures networks and improve green paths that focus on pedestrian movement. This pathway is accessible for every users such as cyclists, runners, families, and the elderly. And these trails provide a liveliness to the community. And one unique example is my strategy is the trail near rail pathway, which I can go in depth later. And I just analyze like some strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and so on and so forth of design strategies. Right now, you are looking at my design framework. As you can see, I have located where the 5-minute pedestrian shed of where it would utilize most of the public transportation, where this area, this long gated area, would be the center of the hub of Main Street. And by just using this area and range, you can notice like this would be a great focal point of where rails, pathways, and anywhere that you want to go around Sumner and downtown is like really quick and accessible. And I also propose that maybe that with such a high unique and high density location, we could implement something like multifamily housing in the southern area, while also including things such as a parking garage for the enhancement of parking, and adding into like green pathways for pedestrians to walk into Main Street. And going into my next slide, or my next image, the proposed side section and street sections, I just basically have like this general idea. Oh, there it is. I just basically have this general idea of what I want Main Street to become, in which it will turn to a woo nerf in relations to the whole site, because I just want to have this like priority of having the site to be pedestrian focused, because a lot of like most of the activity there is going to be pedestrian heavy, and this will also not relinquish any of the activities that use vehicles. Cars and other vehicles can go there, so parades can still access the site. So having this WUNRF would not deter any of the activities currently, but it also enhance the activity for pedestrian as well. And there's also proposals of my street mix with Academy and South Ryan and Alder Avenue. And this big image here in the middle is the image it's called Techno Park Transit Hub. And that is my inspiration of what I want to see the hub to look like in the downtown Sumner. And I know this example is large, but I just want to use this concept and envision this design to a more acceptable scale for Sumner. But in a way, it would look similarly to this, where you could add retail shopping or maybe storage units on top, while also providing both the transport interchange for buses and also the transit hub with the transit station located nearby. So when people like hop out of the bus or hop out of the train transit, then their first choice or their first view is, oh, this large structure with retail shopping and commodities that I might be interested in joining. And then just to get things quicker, I'm going to the last final slide, and it's just basically more in detail concepts of what I was thinking of the rail to trail idea from the very first slide about enhancing the green infrastructures and pathways. So basically, we have this like unique pathway of a transit station, and then there's like this unaccessible like strip of greenery and pathway that's not being used because it's not accessible at all. So in a way, I want to enhance that and provide a rail next to it, next to the train, so people can actually walk through it. And then this could be a new pathway towards the northern part of Sumner. And yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Cipriano. We're moving on to Dennis's presentation. So Dennis, take it away.
Okay. We can start right ahead with my urban design framework and my statement of proposal. It's probably hard to see right now, but the design framework that I've proposed, essentially the idea is to provide and to show that Sumner Main Street and the project site is now the main destination point and the main connector for most of Sumner. The goal for my design framework and for my proposal is to show that Main Street could and should become a backbone and a spine for the rest of Sumner, and specifically downtown. So in the framework, you can see that vehicle traffic, which is shown in the red, is pushed mainly to the peripheral and to the outer edges of the site. It is still permitted on Main Street, but the idea with the design framework is to discourage vehicle traffic on Main Street. And the goal to be to use visual communication skills and visual cues to make that clear that while vehicle traffic is not prohibited, it would be discouraged, and to promote pedestrian movement through Main Street specifically. The reason for that is that when I imagine a major downtown or a major node / hub for communication and socializing, I do imagine pedestrians being able to move freely from space to space and not feeling as though they're limited or that they have specific routes that they have to take. With that being said, in my urban design framework, the spaces that are in orange and yellow, those are the areas that have the most clear and designated pedestrian circulation. You can see that the Heritage Park and the alley to the north and the alleys behind the Main Street buildings on the south all would have shared spaces that would allow vehicles for like utility vehicles and trash vehicles to be able to still pass through those areas whilst providing space for pedestrians to rest as they move around the site. The goal would be to create a WUNRF for Main Street as well. The idea being that the WUNRF would actually only be between the Ryan Avenue and Main Street South, and to the east, there'd be a section where the WUNRF would be removed and it would go back to normal traffic. Because I imagine that because Main Street is one of the few streets that goes east to west, we'd still want to permit traffic between the Traffic Avenue to the west and Wood Avenue to the east. So with Main Street still being allowed to have vehicle traffic, I wanted to focus most of the vehicle traffic south to Academy, where I know that there's some projects that are being proposed there as well. With the dash lines, that's where most of the traffic starts to slow down. So using the visual cues that I mentioned earlier, you would imagine that as people get closer to Main Street, as vehicles move closer to Main Street, they would start getting the idea that perhaps they aren't not that they're not allowed, but they may not be as welcomed. So those dash lines show that. And specifically to the, specifically to the east, where there's a intersection between Wood and Main, I would want to, the goal would be to create a clear sight line. And knowing what I've heard about the ideas to create a gateway at that destination, the goal would be to create a clear sight line from that spot into Heritage Park, but also to the rest of Main Street. And if Main Street were to be able to transform into that pedestrian focused space, as I imagined it, then that sight line would also be able to be, what that viewpoint would also be from the southwest where the transit hub is, and would go straight into Main Street through Heritage Park from the southwest. So again, creating a clear sight line, and the idea being to attract people who are traveling from the major transit routes on the west and the east. Okay, if you were to move down to my site plan. The site plans, I have it now. Focus, as you can see, the idea is to really use green infrastructure and green elements like trees and rain gardens to create a network. The goal being to show that as you get closer to Main Street, it becomes much more pedestrianized, and the trees would be one of the visual cues that would also slow down pedestrian traffic. The materials that you can, it doesn't show specifically, but the red areas and the orange areas are meant to show changes in materials that you can see in the images. In the top left image is a WUNRF that has the vehicle pathways marked in a different material and the pedestrian specific pathways marked with a different material. With that being said, pedestrians are still allowed and are still allowed to move across those two different materials. Looking at time, I'd say we can go to my site section as I have it right now. So it may be challenging to see, but the goal would be to create a WUNRF. There you go. A WUNRF on Main Street. This is looking at Main Street North. A WUNRF that stops just to the west of Ryan Avenue and just to the east of Ryan Avenue. That way, there's still that clear intersection that comes from North Main Street, and vehicles can still travel through Main Street North. However, it would be discouraged. But for that reason, I decided to cut the WUNRF essentially in half and to have that intersection become a normal transit route, because that would be one of the areas where vehicle traffic would be permitted at the same level without being decreased. Okay, I will end it here now and we'll go on to questions.
Thanks so much, Dennis. Yeah, so I'll open it up to everyone for feedback now, and let me know where you want me to zoom to. Please feel free to browse around the first 3 students' work and type in comments or draw over their work, or just tell us your comments. Oh, yeah, whoever would decide
I guess I'll hop in. I like a lot of the thoughts on here. I think it might be a challenge to make Main Street less of a traffic used area, but activating that area and the alleyways around it and utilizing the green space, I think is fantastic. I might be wrong here, but the queuing of the intersection at Main and traffic would be incredibly challenging to move south to Maple Street. Michael, you might have more information on that, but I don't see us being able to stack up cars with the train conflict and with the light. We already have problems with transit not being able to use Maple Street because of site visibility with the train station. But I do see a lot of very interesting things that could be incorporated. I guess my main fear is that traffic isn't welcome on Main Street. But I do like the idea of inviting and making it more pedestrian friendly.
Yeah, thanks for that, Derek. I think the thing to remember is we have limited east-west crossings, particularly across the train tracks. We have Thompson Street, we have Maple Street, we have Main Street, and then we have Zender, which is pretty far to the north, which doesn't seem to be kind of considered as part of this study area because it is pretty far away. Those are our real potential connection points. And you're right, Derek, we would have issues at Maple. There's always the possibility of putting another traffic light signal there. I think the other large consideration, if there was the attempt, so Main Street is a 10 to 15,000 ADT type of roadway. It's a significant amount of vehicles that move through there. So in order to turn it into a more pedestrian friendly area, you're really going to have to give people another route to go. And that's why I think it was Dennis's presentation kind of had people moving off of that. Maybe another one, but I think if we don't give people another place to even consider, we're going to have a real problem trying. And the other thing is, okay, well, what does that alternative route look like? And is that a reasonable place to put traffic? And it will be a question of, impact to residents, impact to single family homes that currently have a local road that would be upgraded to something more significant with, larger amounts of vehicles coming by. So I do see it being a pretty significant struggle to try to get traffic off of Main Street, and it being a pretty direct route also makes it pretty difficult. I like the idea of using kind of some of the side streets. I like thinking of, whether it's Ryan or that alley, particularly north of the east-west alley, that those seem like opportunities where we could, get some benefit there. I like the idea of the sight lines, and I think there has to be kind of a consideration on that. There are a lot of buildings on those sight lines that are major infrastructure that can't move. One is the Ryan House. I think that's right in one of the sight lines, which is the historic property owned by the city, but it's historic. I know there's a few buildings in between here and there that are likely not going to be changing anytime soon. So that there is some difficulties with the sightline idea, but I think there's opportunities.
I just wanted to say, in response to the sideline idea, there would be no plans to remove any of the buildings, more just to create a viewpoint into major destinations within Main Street. So Ryan House would be something that where the sightlines would be focused on. So that was just the idea with that, not to remove anything between along those lines.
Dennis, do
Hi.
you want to, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Should I speak, or Dennis, do you have anything more to say?
Oh, do you want me to respond to some of the questions or statements, Bar? I can do that.
Let's leave it, let's hear Michael.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, first I want to say I appreciate all the ideas. There seems to be a consensus between some of the younger urban planners and people studying it to make more pedestrian friendly, less car centric areas. So, I mean, I think that's something that can't be ignored. That is the future. That's the way my daughter is going to be living. And I understand I think the first initial thought always is, well, where are the cars going to go? Well, in time, less cars will be traveling. You know, we'll have the Red Apple site with all the apartments. We'll have the Riverside apartments. We're going to have a lot of foot traffic. And I think that is the next 20, 30, 40 years. That's what it's going to look like. But I just want to say I really appreciate the direction of the pedestrian friendly way of living and not the car centric pass through. There's plenty of opportunities to live like that in our country. And we're learning from obviously European cities and whatnot that the trend is to go back to a more walkable communal way of living. People are healthier, happier. It makes it a destination. You know, and I, in full disclosure, I live just off Main. So obviously the idea sounds incredibly attractive to me because I try to use my car as least as possible. I ride my bike around town. I love that way of living. So obviously I'm biased to that. But yeah, I just want to say I really appreciate the direction. I think it's great ideas.
Thank you.
One bit of feedback. So I work for the city, but I also live in the downtown and walk a lot. For everyone, actually, I mean, these are great ideas for transit, but also think about that the businesses on Main Street are small businesses. They get a lot of their business from people walking by and literally window shopping. So just maybe one thing to consider is it might work really well on paper to push everyone off Main Street, but you might be actually severely hurting an independent business. Or if you put a bus shelter right in front of a storefront that's only 20 feet wide already, you severely hinder their business. So as someone who does a lot of window shopping, especially right now in Sumner, just maybe think back in the importance of walking past these businesses, seeing them. None of them have name recognition. None of them are McDonald's or the Gap. So they really rely on people looking at them and looking at their window and going, that's really cool. I think I need that dress that's in the window. So just something to maybe factor back in. I just didn't hear anybody mention the impact to independent businesses. The North End has our industrial, but actually when it comes to retail and services, that actually happens on Main Street.
I would agree with Carmen and add to that. There is that temptation to move traffic aside, but we know that it is a major east-west thoroughfare for traffic, as Michael mentioned. And so I would be interested in more fine-grained, what does that pedestrian vehicle interaction look like, and how do they coexist on the street together, and what kinds of infrastructure and amenities are there to provide that safe separation, but also so that they can both work on Main Street.
There's a question in the chat. Could WNRFs be implemented on smaller north-south blocks, making more plazas?
I could say for
go ahead.
I was going to say that for mine specifically, I believe for Cipriano's as well, there's the WNRF would still permit vehicle traffic, just at a lower quantity and less smaller scale, excuse me. And for mine, the Heritage Park would also become, one thing I didn't mention was that Heritage Park would also become leveled and would also become a WNRF, so that it would act as a large plaza on its own. And the goal being to connect to Main Street and to create that clear sight line to Main Street again. So yes, a WNRF would still work on the north to south. The goal being that when you think about a Woonarf or an area that has that same level, you would want there to be quite a bit of activity. And I know that for some of the north to south streets, there aren't as much shops and retail and services, which makes sense, of course. So that was kind of the inspiration for creating Main Street as a Woonarf, just because you would imagine there being pedestrians walking along the entire space and moving in between all the buildings and shops. But I do understand your thoughts and concerns, and it's something I'll keep in mind.
I also want to add in to that Wooners are very versatile in its use and strategy, and same what my colleague Dennis stated is that just adding a Wooner is really it's not gonna hinder the movement or the use of that street for cars and vehicles. It's just gonna really slow it down, so it'll be more safe for pedestrians to transition into. And also, I also heard someone commenting and voicing their concerns about like having bus stations or a bus stop near a front store or a corner store. And in my design framework, I recognize that, and I think it's really minimal, but in one of my maps, if I could show it, if I don't, it's in the design framework. Go to the straight down, like the one in the middle with red.
Sorry, what do you mean, Cipriano?
So from that layout goes down to the next layout down. Yeah, that red one. This is my my pathway and transition, and like basically the railing and the transportation routes that I have implemented. And it's really hard to, because of I distinct it with the thickness of the line, but the bus transit stations and the route was going to consist from going around Sumner Main Street so that it doesn't affect any of the front stores. It's going to go around. I think I decided on having a bus route through Academy and then going up towards Narrow Street, and then it will reuse that bus terminal station that is previously there. If that helps ease your concern about like having it being a detriment for front stores.
I think another thing that I've noticed, it seems like with the Warniff concept, there isn't a lot of area left for parking, which I don't doesn't bother me, but I know it probably would bother quite a few of our businesses too. So I think somebody mentioned a parking garage in their discussions, but I just wanted to put that feedback in that the real estate that you're putting somewhere, that you're dedicating to pedestrians, is coming out of somewhere else. And if it's not coming out of through traffic, then it's coming out of parking, which, like I say, it doesn't bother me too much as a public works type mindset, but I do think it will be a concern for the businesses to not have parking on Main Street.
I think that's a very good point, and the thing that I was considering as well is that I wouldn't want to ruin the amount of traffic that the businesses have currently. I think when I was thinking of the Woonar specifically, I imagine essentially Main Street operating as it does now, but to remove the sidewalks and to just have everything be on the same level. So the parking spots would still be able to be there. They would just be marked with potentially rain gardens separating them from other pedestrian spots, or using ballards or bollards to mark where the vehicle parking would be. Everything would essentially just be on the same level, and there just wouldn't be that change in elevation. The goal being to just make it so that pedestrians will be able to walk more freely from shop to shop. But that is a good point about the parking, is that we wouldn't want to remove, because Main Street is that central destination, especially for shopping. You wouldn't want to remove the storefront parking.
I like that feedback, Dennis. I'd be interested in seeing a cross section of what that might look like going down Main Street.
It's there in mind. The scale is difficult to show in this because it essentially makes everything level, but it would be possible to make it so that the parking would remain the same as it is now, and to just mark it off so that and the areas where there's parking are on each end, they are bookended by rain gardens or green elements. So yeah, if you go up, Bara. So it's difficult to see on this, but there's a spot you can at least see right there in that middle road that's going north, and to the left and to the right, there's a spot where the curb comes out and then goes back in and then comes back out. Like those are the type of things that I was imagining being used as areas to mark parking, and that could right there, because there's still sidewalk there, then it would look as it normally does. But that same sort of thing could be done using rain gardens and bollards for the rest of the street that is at Woodruff level or at the flat level. But
great. Do we want to talk about the message from the chat about Heritage Park green space? Could there be more of a plaza and traffic restricted area? From Derek.
Yeah, sure. For mine, the urban design framework that I have has Heritage Park being closed off to vehicle traffic, and to move that parking to the more arterial streets, so that it does become a plaza. As I was mentioning earlier, it would remove the actual sidewalks, and so that it's one flat plane. And whether or not it's totally green or whether it's a combination of brick pavement with green elements would really be up to the city and how they imagine that space themselves. I would imagine the example that I had in my site plan is from Pioneer Square in Portland, which is a much larger scale, but that does have brick paving and a combination of green elements and water features. But that would essentially be something that I could imagine happening at Heritage Park, so that it can still operate as a destination space and still can host events.
So for mine, on my Heritage Park, if you go to the proposed site section and street section, so at the bottom right here, I didn't explain that much, but it's like traffic restricted, but there is a one-way lane right here where it would be traffic restricted, or like one way, and then it's just a one-way drive lane, and then towards the bus station, and then but it's mostly just a green space. So there's a parallel parking that would block off, like act as a barrier for people to stay inside Heritage Park, and I think it would be a great use on how we could use that as just a barrier. So, but it's mostly a plaza that I think would work here. That's all I want to add to mine.
Okay, last comment.
I could add that what's driving these primarily is pedestrian friendliness in the face of a lot of traffic, and 10 to 15,000 cars a day is quite a bit to contend with. Of course, main streets are usually hustle and bustle with transportation by people using cars and buses and so forth. So I think the driving force of making it more pedestrian friendly is at hand, and how you can use, let's say, a concept like a WUNR to infuse that. And if you can't deal with some of the other concerns that were brought up, let's say of creating new connections across the railroad tracks or things like that. And I guess from my own personal experience, I know that there is definitely design concepts that could happen on Main Street that follow a WUNR sort of idea, that still provide places for pedestrians, creates a different tone for traffic, places on street parking, all the things that have been discussed.